I have been listening keenly to the contributors, and all of them are on point. I will start by expressing my condolences to those who have lost loved ones. And I would want to express my concern that we have as of now, about 300 missing persons, people who have simply vanished or disappeared and whose whereabouts are not known. I had raised a concern a week ago about information I had received concerning hundreds of people who were killed in Githurai and whose bodies have not been traced, and who I understood, yet to be verified, that they were cremated at the Kahao barracks. I still would like to challenge the Kenya National Commission for Human Rights, the Law Society of Kenya, the defenders, various human rights defenders organizations, the media, the DCI, and various government entities, including Ruto himself, to be able to produce a list of all the missing Kenyans since the protest began. We need to have a clear idea as to how many people have actually been abducted, how many people have lost their lives or have been killed, how many people are injured, and how many have simply disappeared. And we would want to assume that those who are missing are probably dead, because a human being does not go missing. These people were active just weeks ago. They engaged in protests, and they cannot simply disappear. Two, I would want to address the issue of the so-called government pathologist Jahansen Oduor's declaration that the decapitated and mutilated bodies that were found at the quarry had no evidence of bullets in them. Being able to examine decomposing bodies and trace bullets that had killed them, if that is how they had died. It is also impossible for anyone to know whether these bodies had been tortured before the individual succumbed to torture. All of them were killed. All of them were dumped near a police station. We can all reasonably conclude that all of them probably were killed by security forces. And we need answers. We need answers now, and we don't want excuses. It is important for us to note, my third point, that as we speak today, Finance Bill 2024 is the law. It automatically became law on July the 18th, after 21 days had expired from the time that the president or Ruto purportedly rejected it. It has not been repealed by the National Assembly. And we have not had Ruto or anybody or any of the leaders at the National Assembly say that there is an intention to repeal it. Therefore, we have to say all the people Ruto has killed so far will not get justice until all the grievances for which they participated at the protests are addressed. And that starts with Ruto himself. My fifth point is Ruto has no tenure. He has no security of tenure. Professor Migaya Kech has tenure at the University of Nairobi as a distinguished professor of law, or of the university, because I think he's a distinguished professor. And once you're a distinguished professor, you're a professor of everything. But Ruto has no tenure. The 5 years that Kenyans delegated to him the power to govern, not to rule, was a temporary delegation. It was not a permanent delegation. The delegated power was withdrawn on the 25th of June, and Ruto stands popularly impeached by the people. Therefore, he is legitimately in power, and all the threats he's issuing against the people are an aggravation to the grievances that we had when the people took to the streets and declared that they had withdrawn their delegated power to him. Therefore, Ruto's declaration of war on the people is a declaration of war on all Kenyans, and it's a declaration of war on the Constitution of Kenya, which vests the power to recall him as their delegated leader back to where they want him, home. We want unity of purpose. We want people to realize that no matter our differences, and these differences could be generational, these differences could be ideological, these differences could be intellectual, these differences could be gender, these differences could be tactical or strategic. We have to realize that the only thing that must unite us, and unite us now, is that all Kenyans feel that Ruto has offended them to a point that it cannot be cured. The looting of the country has reached a stage where it having them apprehended, charged, and tried and convicted, and then sentenced, and the properties they have looted repatriated, is recycling them. We have Chirchir reappointed to a bigger ministry than where he looted before. And remember, this man started looting at the Interim Independent Electoral Commission. He was involved in the Chicken Gate. Then he graduated to the Ministry of Energy. And the former despot Uhuru fired him because of corruption. But Ruto felt, in his lack of wisdom, that this is the man he needed in the same ministry where he had been fired for corruption. And he continued to be corrupt. And he was recently fired for corruption. Then Ruto brings him back. That shows you that Ruto is redeemable. There is no discussion, no dialogue, or any kind of reprieve or anything that will change this man. He thinks that after he has killed a number of Kenyans and abducted them and disappeared them, that he has scared the Gen Zs and the millennials and the patriotic revolutionaries who have been facing him every week on the street. And the time has come when we should demonstrate to Ruto through action that we are not backing down. How do we do that? My humble submission is that we should have marathon daily demonstrations and protests. And these daily marathon demonstrations should take place all over the country. Whether on Tuesday, some of the patriots will head to JKIA, others must head elsewhere. Because if you all head to JKIA, he will marshal his goons to JKI only. Then we will leave the rest of the country for him to roam about and to threaten us. We have to scatter his goons everywhere. As many people are heading towards JKIA, many people must head to Parliament Square and Arambe House and the CBD and occupy all of it. Occupy everywhere should have meaning. When patriots in Mombasa, in Nyanza, in Western, at the coast, at all and in all counties gather in large numbers, wear Ruto's goons down until he falls. The last thing I would like to say is in answer to the three, I believe there were 3 or 4 people that asked questions before I conclude. Number one, Simon Gathoni said, police are not our friends. We also have weapons. We can use them. Maj was right. Yes, police of Kenya have demonstrated, at least the majority of them, that they are not our friends, that they are serving a tyrant and they are harming us. And it is not in our place to fall into the trap of arming ourselves to confront them. Because when you do that, you may have to form an army to fight them. We don't have time. We don't have the resources. We don't have the arms. They will just pick us one at a time, and it will actually serve their interest in the sense that they can now say we are violent, we are chaotic, we are anarchists, and the world and the press will more than happily champion that trumpet. We cannot give them that. We have to remain peaceful. We have to remain organized. We have to remain fearless. And it is through that that we are going to wear them down. Just like many other countries have gained and won a revolution peacefully by being unarmed. They did so in France in 1789. They did so in Sweden in 1809. They did so in Norway in 1814. They did so in the Netherlands in 1848. They did so in Austria in 1918. They did so in Turkey or Turkey in 1923. There was a mixture of that and armed struggle in Cuba in 1959. They did so in Portugal in 1974. They did so in Bahrain in 1971. They did so in Spain in 1978. They did so in Philippines in 1986. They did so in South Korea in 1987. They did so in Poland, where it was basically the workers protesting continuously for years in 1988. They did so in the Czech Republic in 1989. They did so in East Germany in 1989. They did so in Romania in 1989. They did so in Indonesia in 1998. They did so in Serbia in the year 2000. They did so in Georgia the year 2003. They did so in Nepal in 2006. They did so in Myanmar with mixed results in 2011 because the military eventually overthrew the revolutionaries. But they succeeded in 2011. They did so in Ukraine in 2014. And they recently did so in the Philippines again. And this history of resistance has always resulted in the country becoming more developed, more prosperous, more industrialized, and the standard of living of the people have always been better from the regime that was replaced. So we can do it too. People were asking me on X, oh, Miguna, all the examples you've given are not in Africa. Kenya is going to be the first African country to do it. We can be the first. Why shouldn't we? All these countries and peoples that I have listed were not born in Pluto. They were not in Jupiter. They were on planet Earth. And so we can do it too. The next question was by Plusman. Memoranda to a president that has been impeached, a president that Kenyans have recalled, is not necessary. No, we are not going to have a memoranda to any president, the illegitimate president Ruto. Our memoranda and memorandum is on the streets of the Republic of Kenya. He knows what the problems are. And of course, He cannot address them because he's a pathological liar, he's a narcissist, he's become a tyrant. Godfather asked about Occupy JKIA, and I believe I've already answered that question. Then he also raised the issue of Uhuru Park. I would discourage all of us from going to Uhuru Park. Why? It is fenced, it is secure, it is a trap. Once you go to Uhuru Park and they surround you, they can butcher people without any restraint. And there is not much impact you will do at Uhuru Park. In fact, they can let you do your thing there for 1 year and it will not affect anybody. The purpose of occupying public spaces is not just to make sure that we speak to Ruto and his thugs in one voice loudly, but to disrupt everything, to disrupt transport, to disrupt business, to disrupt all activities in the country. That's the language he understands. Ruto understands the language of money and business. He understands the language of how he's going to be perceived abroad, the handlers that he has as the IMF. You saw that the IMF already released a statement trying to appear contrite when they have not withdrawn fully their punitive economic programs that Ruto is trying to impose on us. Josephine asked, should we amend the constitution of Kenya? The answer is no. We should not amend the constitution of Kenya. We should implement it fully. We cannot amend something that has not been fully implemented. The constitution of Kenya is the one giving us the right to occupy the streets, to impeach Ruto, to recall him, to say that he has lost legitimacy and he must go. If we pay attention to the alleged call to amend or whatever, we will be being sidetracked, like Raila Odinga, the conman, tried to do with Uhuru Kenyatta in 2022, when they brought us the poisonous chalice, BBI. We should not fall into that trap. We want our constitution implemented in full. Now, she also said, would it eradicate levels of corruption? The constitution would not eradicate anything. As it is right now, the constitution already proclaims itself and provides for a governance that is not corrupt. But of course, it is individuals, human beings, that are not enforcing it, especially Chapter 6, and continue to be corrupt. If you do not punish the corrupt, you will never eliminate corruption. And you cannot punish the corrupt if you have corrupt people in power. So we must remove all of them. Then she talked about priorities 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. No, our priority should remain one. Ruto must go. You see, when you have such a clear, simple, singular priority, nobody will be able to confuse it. You cannot give Ruto demands 1, 2, 3, 4 when you want him to go. You don't expect him to be the one who is making changes. We don't want reforms. We want a complete, total revolution, an overhaul of the entire system. Let me finish, and I'm sorry to have gone on for a while, with what Frederick Douglass said. Frederick Douglass was an African American writer, preacher, abolitionist, orator, anti-slavery activist. And he said, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet depreciate agitation are men, and he meant also women, who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. This struggle may be moral, may be a moral one, or it may be a physical one, or it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. I drop the mic.
Huyo ni mwanaharakati Miguna akieleza kwamba bado kuna mapambano, akijaribu tu kupea majenzis ideas na kuwafundisha jinsi ya kung'atua William Samoei Ruto mamlakani. Kama ulivyosikia Miguna ameelezea vitu mingi, akiwaambia tu wasiende tu Uhuru Park, pale wanaweza fungiwa na wakose kutoka pale wakisaraundiwa na jeshi ama polisi, pale itakuwa ni ngumu. So amejaribu tu kuwaelezea waweze kuoccupy sehemu mbalimbali za nchi ikiwemo CBD, JKIA na sehemu zingine tu mbalimbali kama ulivyosikia. Na tena ameongea kuhusu wale ambao waliuliwa pale inaitwaje, sehemu fulani hivi wakati wa maandamano ile baada ya kuoccupy parliament. Kulikuwa na ilikuwa pale, sijui inaitwaje, nimesahau pale, lakini akasema watu wengi waliuliwa pale na kuweza mwili wao ikaweza kuchomwa pale kwa kambi ya jeshi ya Kahawa. So sijui una maoni gani kuhusiana na Miguna jinsi alivyoongea na maoni yake yote kwa jumla? Kama uko na maoni tofauti niachie hapo kwenye comment section. Nashukuru sana kwa kutazama Wasource TV. Tafadhali kama hujasubscribe na kuomba uweze kusubscribe ndani ya Wasource TV. Mimi niite Manoti. Nashukuru sana kwa wakati wako. TV kama kawaida ni Wasource TV. Hadi wakati mwingine, nashukuru sana kwa wakati wako. Asante sana na ukuwe na jioni njema.